And the meeting is being recorded now. I'm sorry. We were supposed to say something else at the beginning. Oh, wait. It's actually...
Hello, and welcome to the Women's Cave.
Thank
you. Ladies Tale podcast. Why not?
Oh, well, no, this is not going on the Ladies Tale
Well,
podcast. I can tell you that right now. This
is
it's a poet speaking to a writer person thing.
Wow.
Person.
Wow. Okay.
Never mind.
I can't go there with you, Winona. I mean,
no,
like it was so bad. No. I had to start itching my ear because I was just like, this is gonna hurt. This is gonna hurt my ears so bad. I had to start itching it. I already knew what it was. All right, I'm Jade.
And Winona, and apparently the itchy ear thing is contagious.
It's not contagious. You can't be. It's not contagious. Winona, I can't.
Oh, we wrote books.
We wrote literary life guides for pop poetry. Yes, y'all. Sometimes we actually do have something wise to say.
It's very rare.
And probably in written form.
It's always in written form.
So here are like a couple of books that everyone really likes, and you can get on Audible or where you buy your audiobooks. Okay, and I thought divorce was bad with other life lessons, and I thought being grown up was easy. Wow, we actually have the new edition. Thank you, Winona.
I went and found it.
Thank you for finding it. And sorry.
You good? If only I were me.
A memoir in verse. And Winona, what are your books?
And my books are The Widow's Web and Foreign Coffee that are now audio books.
And coming soon, If Only I Were Me. Not really, because that's already out. But, and I thought I did my journey alone. Just wanted to make sure y'all were paying attention. You can find out everything you ladies are doing. And I mean everything, and probably some stuff you didn't want to know on www.andithoughladies.com.
Before we move on, that's 5 of the 17 books that we have. Okay, now we can move on to the guests.
Okay, yeah, so y'all aren't here to hear about us.
You're here to hear from our wonderful guests. Wonderful guests.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm Charlie Rossietier. I write poetry and I run a wonderful podcast called Poetry Spoken Here, which we've been doing for about 5 years. And it's a pretty standard format. I mean, basically, I interview the poet and the poet reads a few poems, and that goes for about a half an hour. And there's about 160 or so episodes up on SoundCloud. You can get it anywhere you get your podcasts. That's Poetry Spoken Here. Our website is poetryspokenhere.com.
Okay, my question is, how do you get a poet to speak for 30 minutes on some poetry?
I mean, what do you talk about on these episodes?
Oh, well, usually it's something I get from reading the poems that, I got their stuff ahead of time. And so, for instance, I just had an interview with the guy who goes by the name of Propaganda. And in his book, he mentioned, I had the book, of course, and the poetry that's in there. But he also mentioned that life's a little interesting for a guy in a household with 2 daughters. So I pick up on something like that. I don't want an interview with me to be like what he would get with somebody else. Possibly somebody would take a much more high literary approach to the thing. So I just don't hesitate to go personal and just, if this interests me, I say, hey, how about this? What's that about? And he talked about, clearing hair out of the drain and dropping in on conversations where he's not exactly wanted. And it was fun to do. And, and of course I find it real interesting because anyway, most poets are pretty good at talking because I think most of them are pretty good at talking. The ones who've been published for a while, maybe they've done interviews before too, and they're just, loose about it. So we find things somehow.
I'm going to have to agree that most poets are good at talking because you have to understand this poet right here said, what am I going to talk about? I asked one question and we were at, I think that's about 2 minutes in. We're good.
We'll love it. We love it so much. So when did you start writing poetry and how?
Oh, I was all grown up, actually. I wasn't one of these people who did it like in junior high or something, Actually, I was living in Milwaukee and I had a friend who was really into haiku. And we would go over to Lake Michigan in the morning. Milwaukee's right there on Lake Michigan in Wisconsin. And there was a wonderful, the park building was there. And they had a little concession where you could get coffee. It was fabulous. We go sit there and look at the lake and just laugh and talk about stuff. And Jeff was so into haiku, I thought I'd give it a go. And then we got into that. And I got seriously hooked when I decided I would just go to the lake every day and try to write a haiku. And the idea was, well, you don't want to say the same thing every day. So it turned out to be a simple idea that was an interesting challenge. And
Yeah.
beyond that, and at some point I decided I had to start carrying a notebook all the time. And at that point I figured, okay, you know, I'm serious about writing poetry.
Wow.
That's nice. I
Wow.
don't meet many people
That did that. That's
that
amazing. That's a great story.
and they started at a not in the middle school, not in high
High school,
school.
I
Because there's
guess.
always people.
No. Well, I piddled around with. I was always a verbal guy, and I used to make up Mad Magazine type stories for my friends back in high school. Stuff like that, just messing around. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
So,
that makes sense now.
so
Okay.
I'd always been writing things, but not poetry.
Did you ever publish any of those poetry that you wrote at the lake?
Yeah, I have a book called whoa, what is it? Lake Lakeside Poems. They came out recently, but it includes poems from like many years, and they're not all haiku. They're just poems that are based on being at the lake and or near a lake. And again, it was the same kind of challenge. You can't go out and say, "Oh, the lake's beautiful today." Next morning, "Oh, the lake's beautiful today." It's really nice if somebody comes by and plays volleyball or something or whatever. And get a variety of things in there. My books are available at foothillspublishing.com. And I have a number of books, and they are there. I have a winter poems book. I live in Vermont now. We have a substantial winter here. And I also have Green Mountain Meditations, which is specifically Vermont poems. When I
I,
got here 5 years ago, I noticed a wonderful thing about Bennington, Vermont. There are no parking meters anywhere. And I came here from Chicago. And that fact got me going. I said, well, if I'm here a while, that's going to become just part of life and I'm going to kind of not notice. So I should try consciously to really look around and see things that are that I know now I notice are unique to here or really interesting to hear that aren't like other places.
exactly.
You know,
That's beautiful. It's a beautiful way to connect with your new environment, especially to write
Yes.
poems
yeah,
around your environment. I have a question I'd like to divert away from poetry for a moment.
sure.
And you mentioned Wisconsin, which makes me go cheese curds and Culver's.
Cheese and what?
Cheese curds
Yeah.
and restaurant Culver's. Have you ever eaten either?
I've had cheese curds. They're no big deal. I'd rather have regular cheese myself. To me, to my taste, I wouldn't go out of my way to get cheese curds. There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine, but they're like a mild cheese, right? Like a
Yeah.
very mild cheese. Yeah.
Oh, and then, of course, I don't know. Have you ever seen a Culver's in Wisconsin?
I don't think so.
Oh, as soon as we hit the Wisconsin line, we're like, "Where's Culver's?"
Where is it? We like put it in Google Maps immediately.
And I don't, do you think the cheese tastes different wherever you are in Wisconsin?
Where you were.
Whoa.
Where in Wisconsin?
I don't know. I can tell you one thing interesting about Vermont, though. They have a lot of cheddar of different kinds,
Mhm.
but you can go looking for other kinds of cheese, and it's just they don't make it here,
Wow.
which is kind of surprising. You know, I can't name the specific ones now, but I was very surprised to find it's not just a big array of all the cheeses, but they are really bad on the cheddar.
Yes.
I,
Vermont has some really good. I
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
personally been to
Vermont.
Vermont, but like they were like Vermont cheddar, and it's always a
That's
little
the
bit
one.
better. That's
That's
the
the
one.
one.
That's the one I'm buying. I'm buying
Got
it.
it.
Every time. Okay, so we talked a bit about your podcast. Now,
Well, we haven't really talked about
I was like, let's go a little deeper about
Yeah.
podcasts. Why did you even start the podcast in the first place?
Oh.
There are so many poetry podcasts, like 8.
Well, when I started it, there weren't so many. Actually, just what we started 5 years ago. And even 5 years ago, there were not a lot of podcasts. And so, and the thing is, we were leaving Chicago, knew I was coming to Vermont, right? And I've been doing this kind of a project for a long time. I had a couple of others before this, same format, talk to the poet, they read some poems. Uh, so I wanted something I could continue when I was not in Chicago,
Mhm.
with lots of poets around. And so I figured, hey, something I can do online would be ideal because I'm here in Bennington, but anybody's got a computer I can have on the show. And so that was the fundamental idea. Now, why I want to do it in the first place, all of these programs, is actually one of the three things I want to tell you.
Yes.
Ooh, let's get to
Let's
those.
get to that.
Three things
It's
people ought to know.
because poetry is the world doesn't really realize how important poetry is, but it really is. Poetry helps you get to the truth, I think, and the truth is real important. And you can just look around if you take time, look at everybody going, "Oh wow, that was terrible what they did in Tulsa 100 years ago," because the truth was buried all that time, hidden, not communicated. And so that's just so now what this year's a big deal. 100th anniversary. We got, I think, three different special, documentaries about it. And at the same time, right now, what's going on? What's going on with January the 6th? Strikes me as pretty similar. Some folks, even though you could see it on TV, want to try to convince you that what you're pretty sure you saw didn't really happen that way. And so you got to stop and seek the truth. And whether it's about political issues like that, which I want to be sure to get in, or personal things, just an idea, an attitude. Sometimes you write a poem to clarify what you are thinking or feeling about a person, a relationship, an issue, something like that. So uh, there you go. I forgot what your question was, but I wanted to get
No,
that in.
that was amazing, and I love how
Are there two more things that you wanted to talk
Yes.
about that people should know?
you know. Yes.
I want to get this in right now. I got this fabulous book recently, and I've been sitting around telling me this is a great book. I want to tell everybody about it. I realized I could do it here.
Yes.
This is by Haki Madhubuti,
Ooh.
lives in Chicago. Haki Madhubuti, not nearly as well known as he should be, the founder of Third World Press, and the only poet I know who has written a book with 1 million copies in print. It's astonishing. That's not a poetry book. It was published in, this is wild, published in 1990, called Black Men, then you got a little colon, Obsolete, Single, Dangerous, The African American Family in Transition, 1990, Haki Madhubuti. He was, when he was younger, his name was Don L. Lee. And his first book, he had a lot of recognition for. And I asked him once where the name came from, the Haki thing. And he said he was just getting all this kind of publicity and it wasn't clear what it was about, but it was just kind of some weird celebrity thing or not. So he changed the name to Madhubuti. He also runs a school on the south side of Chicago, totally a giving back kind of guy. I can't say enough good things about him, and he's not nearly well known enough. And so this book, taught by women, is a tribute to the women in his life. So he was mentored by Gwendolyn Brooks. They were very close. He's often said she was like a mother to him. Just really incredible, beautiful. And there's a number of poems in here for and about her. There's also a number of poems in here for and about his mother, who also has a really compelling life story. He wrote a book about her called Yellow Black. Anyway, so that's another thing I want to be sure to get in here today because I just think the book is so good. Everybody should buy it or at least get their library to buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because, I mean, honestly, he needs to sell another 1 million copies of that. Honestly,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
It
just
would be
Let's do this. Let's do it. All right, and number
absolute.
three. There was a one more thing you wanted to share.
Well, it kind of runs together. I guess I just was thinking about the poetry and truth. I also think an element of poetry is self care. So whether you're reading poetry and understanding some things about yourself and the world, or whether you're writing poetry and it not for publication, just for yourself, that's a kind of self care. And the whole thing comes down to a kind of a take some time to stop and, we're talking a little bit like mindfulness kind of thing here. Take time, pay attention, what's going on with you, what's going on with the world. And poetry can help you do that. So I like giving poets a platform who are working on that and who's maybe somebody else will find their book and love it, get some insights about something.
I'm
I do
loving.
have some
Yes,
questions
go
though,
for it.
because you said that you were published by an actual press.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Because published poetry doesn't get published supposedly. That's what everyone.
Oh, well, they just say that. And some people think you have to pay to submit to magazines too, but you don't really. If you look around, you know, some of them want you to pay a submission fee, but an awful lot don't. Well, the way I got published was rather interesting. This guy put out a call from his press, my friend Michael Zarnicki, and this is Foothills Publishing. He puts out a thing looking for poems for an anthology about Route 20. He likes to take road trips. And Route 20 is the longest continuous. It goes all the way across country, Boston to I think Newport, Oregon. So it's the longest continuous one. 66 starts in Chicago, so no competition there.
Yeah.
Anyway, Michael loves road trips, and he had this thing out and I had a couple of poems I thought were relevant enough. Maybe you'll take them. So it was one of these things where I sent it, and maybe I don't know, 6 months go by, and usually you're hesitant to bug the editor. You don't have to get irritated. You want them to accept your poem. I finally wrote to him and said, "What's up? Are you doing the what's happening here?" And by the way, I've got a manuscript of poem. I had this poems I'd put together ready to go that I hadn't submitted anywhere yet. Oh, do you look at manuscripts for books? Because I know he publishes books. Uh, and he said, well, so I don't know, we got a little bogged down on the anthology, but send me what you got. And since he does it himself, this is a beautiful thing. They live in upstate New York, off the grid, and they they produce the books there at his house, put them together. They're hand stitched. I don't have one within reach to show you. They're lovely. Anyway, he writes back and says, "Okay, cool, we'll take it."
Yeah.
And the most interesting thing was he can get bogged down. But the wonderful thing about Michael is when he decides to do something, like about 3 weeks later, I'm holding the book in my hand. So it's just like, whoa, okay, this is cool. And we became friends. I went to visit and I found out we both really like the ancient Chinese poets. I looked at his shelf and saw a couple of books and said, well, nobody has these, except I do, of course. And we're going, oh my God. And so we're good buddies. We
Sounds
play
like
bocce.
sounds like a it sounds more not like a publishing author relationship. It sounds like a literary buddy movie waiting to be made.
There you go. Yeah,
Pretty much.
right.
Pretty much. Okay, so
Yeah, something
I
like
have
that.
to have my last question.
No, I need my narcissism.
Okay,
question.
narcissism question.
So my narcissism question, which I
Oh.
ask every episode, is going to be: so, like, when are we coming on this podcast? Because we write poetry,
And we're joking.
and we're
Hey, it doesn't sound like a terrible idea to me, but I got to see some poems ahead of time so I know what's what. So you got my email address. Shoot me some poems.
Okay, all right.
All
Come
right.
on.
We'll do so.
that.
I've had lots of no, I gotta not. I'm gonna censor myself for you.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, you don't think
No,
I'll
I
be
love it.
all? Oh,
it
you
was
got me. Well, you think I'll be all? I'll say something like, womanly complimentary thing and get accused of being too,
I understand.
I'm not gonna say that. I'm just gonna think it.
Yeah, okay. All right. Okay,
Go
so
look at who's been there lately. Go look at who's been on the show lately.
we will. I mean,
Lovely.
seriously, we always follow poetry podcasts
Yes, we
because we're poets and we need to
Exactly.
support other poets.
Mhm.
So
There you go.
I guess my last question was gonna be like two questions. And one, what is some advice that you would give new people trying to break into poetry? And then second, where can people find out more about you and your books and your publisher? Because obviously he makes these wonderful books.
Okay. Well, for breaking, what do you mean breaking in there? I mean, you can find places to publish. It really helps to kind of, if you really have an open mic in your town, it helps to go. There will be people there who have already published poems, and they're in a magazine. They hear you and say, this place where I published might like that one. It's not uncommon. I mean, I'm doing that all the time. Yeah, just you read. I think that's one way to go. Just make some connections with people right with you. Don't expect you're going to go out and get in the New Yorker tomorrow, or the New York Times. Just if you want to get published, see what's happening around your town, see what the people are doing, who's connecting. I think that's the best, simplest thing you can do anyway. And as for getting more information about moi, it's the podcast website is poetryspokenhere.com. And we have a lovely project going on also, which is the open mic of the air. And for that, you record a poem. You say, "Hi, I'm blah, blah. I live in blah, blah." And you read a poem that's 3 minutes or less. And when we get about 8 or 10 of those together, we make an episode out of that. And that's really interesting. We've had people from, like India and Ukraine. That's not the most, but Scotland, Ireland, and all over the country. So it's really interesting to have an episode with these people. Here's somebody from West Virginia, here's somebody from San Francisco. It's fun to hear the variety of voices. Uh, and that's a case where I don't mind not having a video because just hearing their voice and their accents is adds a funny little dimension to it. And my books are available at foothillspublishing.com. And the way Michael puts them up, there's always a couple of sample poems from each one to help you judge if you really think it's interesting enough you want to get it. And there you go.
That is
I
wonderful.
love
Thank you
this
so
idea.
much for coming on the show today. We really appreciate it. And sharing like the 3 points that you really wanted to share. I love it very much.
I feel like I
All
know.
Absolutely, don't you? Oh, you come away feeling like you know more. All right, so
Jade, would you like to wrap us up?
absolutely. Just remember, y'all, you can find out everything you want to know about your ladies on www.andithoughtLadies.com. You can even look at our new logo, y'all. It's beautiful.
Cool.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
And just remember,
Beautiful.
Oh no, where's our charity?
yes, and just remember at the bottom, there will be our charities that we probably support. We support them also. We thank you in advance for that. No, I was getting to that.
I know.
But just remember, y'all, wisdom is all around you. If
You're open to finding it and accepting it. So peace and love, you guys, from Will Nona
and Jade, bye bye. Oh yeah, thanks for listening.